Hi. I believe Jehovah's Witnesses do not differentiate between uniformity and unity. And to enforce uniformity, they believe they achieve unity. I want to read to you from a section in Jerry Bergman's book, Jehovah's Witnesses and the Problem of Mental Illness, where he gives a summary of the ways in which the Watchtower achieves uniformity. The witnesses use a number of techniques to produce conformity and compliance with their rules. Many of these are commonly known as mind control or brainwashing, and some of these are as follows. 1. The Watchtower endeavors to reduce both the amount and type of dissident information witnesses absorb by limiting fellowship, especially with dissidents, which witnesses under pain of disfellowshipping are not allowed to talk to. They prohibit witnesses from reading anti-witness literature, and even discourage them from reading any outside literature, except possibly popular non-religious newspapers and magazines. They also strongly discourage association with all outsiders, again under pain of disfellowshipment. Now that kind of puzzled me, that statement. I'll reread it. They also strongly discourage association with all outsiders, again under pain of disfellowshipment. So I thought, well, no, that didn't seem right. The only thing, so I don't know for sure what Bergman meant by that, but the only thing I could think of was that a person is discouraged from association with religious services outside of the Watchtower and might be disfellowshipped for that. Or for bad association. He wouldn't be disfellowshipped for the bad association, but if he refused to comply with the advice of the Watchtower, he could be disfellowshipped for that. So I don't know if that's what he meant, but that's the only sense I could make of it. They absolutely prohibit association with all critics, disfellowshipped or not. Well, that's true. This, in essence, filters out of witness awareness dissident information and concerns. They are thus indoctrinated by being exposed to one side, an important mind control technique. 2. Information that they are allowed is highly selective, designed to either distort or openly present a false picture of the witnesses and their organization, their work and activity, and what they are doing. The extent of this is illustrated as follows. Now he gives a case history of a witness. Looking back to 1972, when I first started studying with Jehovah's Witnesses, I was delighted to be part of the only organization on earth that taught the truths of God. It seemed logical that there would be many valuable articles in older Watchtower magazines as well, especially in the writings of the founder of the Watchtower, C.T. Russell. I knew an elder and his wife that had all the older publications, and I spent hours poring over the early magazines. It soon became clear, however, that the truth in 1892 held little resemblance to the truth in 1972. For Russell warned against forming an organization, freely celebrated Christmas and birthdays, allowed the visitation of other churches, and spoke extensively of a relationship with Christ and being part of his bride, all of which would be strangely foreign to the modern Watchtower magazine. I was distinctly told by the elders not to spend time going over older literature, as it was old light, having been replaced by newer truths. Later, when I went to Bethel, Watchtower headquarters, in 1974, I remember a campaign underway to send any old literature to the Watchtower in order to stock Kingdom Hall libraries of the newer congregations. And yet several brothers at the Watchtower farms told me that most of the books were secretly burned to prevent witnesses from being confused by them. Today, few Kingdom Halls have libraries that go back farther than 1960, and if they do, they are often not accessible to the general congregation, and certainly not accessible to outsiders, non-witnesses. Older publications cannot be obtained from the headquarters earlier than 1960, and they refuse to make photocopies of older publications, despite having complete libraries in several locations at the Brooklyn headquarters. Since most of today's witnesses have been in the organization less than 10 years, they have no idea what the Watchtower taught 40, 60, or 100 years ago, and therefore are not aware of any inconsistencies. This is exactly the way the Watchtower wants it. So that's the end of a personal testimony of someone who left the witnesses. Bergman goes on, the Watchtower also discourages criticism of the organization's policy and doctrine. All questioning, even if it is valid and expresses a genuine concern or a clear demonstrable problem, is discouraged for the following reasons. Questions indicate doubt. One is not to doubt, as this is at best a weakness or at worst a sin. Questioning, even if one's concerns are correct, is inappropriate because it is running ahead of God's organization. Coming to a knowledge about God's organization does or... I'm going to have to repeat that. Questioning, even if one's concerns are correct, is inappropriate because it is running ahead of God's organization, i.e., coming to a knowledge before God's organization does, or seeing a problem before God's organization does. This is wrong because if the direction that one is going is valid, one should stay with God's organization and progress with it, and not run ahead of it, even if one is going in the right direction. Progress in the truth is less important than unity. It is not to be sacrificed for the sake of unity, even if an objection or concern that one has is indeed correct. Voicing complaints, concerns, etc., even if fully valid, are seen as fault-finding, murmuring, an expression of a negative attitude or a negative spirit, and thus to be discouraged, again, even if the concerns are valid. The witness is encouraged to be heavily involved in activities which are physically exhausting and somewhat mentally draining, such as attending 5 meetings per week and going from door to door, 10 to 15 hours per month. Although many witnesses do not achieve this goal, nonetheless they are kept busy to the point that they do not have the mental or physical energy to involve themselves in extensive mental reflection on the organization. By encouraging menial work, one of the most common occupations of witnesses is custodian or janitorial work, mostly cleaning. They force witnesses in a situation where they have neither the time, the inclination, nor the mental or physical energy to involve themselves in extensive mental reflection on the organization and its policies. So a number of those things we experienced because our 200-page documentation, we were told, was was going to discourage people, so it was wrong. Even though we were asking questions, had concerns, and wanted resolution to them, it was still viewed as wrong, and it got us disfellowshipped. Okay, Bergman continues to kind of summarize. He says, this brief review of a few of the many internal problems of the society should suffice to show that there are many differences between the present structure of the Watchtower Society and that of the early Christian church and the historical Christian social concerns. Many differences could be pointed out, such as the high degree of doctrinal conformity insisted on by the Watchtower, even in areas where there is little scriptural evidence or discussion. There are, of course, similarities between early Christianity and modern-day witnesses, and these are constantly harped upon in Watchtower or Witness publications. The many differences, on the other hand, are rarely discussed. I think that's a very valid point. We only hear of where they think they're doing good in comparison to early church, but never where they differ. A major concern is that the modern witness organization tends to be non-responsive to the needs of individual members. The organization seems almost totally preoccupied with carrying out what they perceive as their chief mission, proselytizing non-witnesses, to the serious neglect of the typical witness. It is felt that the chief concern should be to present the witness message to non-witnesses. Beyond its effective presentation, the witnesses do not see their role as converting or bringing about any social or other changes in the world. This almost unilateral purpose tends to discourage putting forth the effort toward helping individual witnesses deal with their problems. Now that really struck me as I lived that, because there was a period of time with David and me when I was going to the meetings and David wasn't. I was close to tears at every meeting. I was in fear of David's future, his eternity, his salvation. And so when the elders came to the house and called, I thought, oh good, they're here to straighten David out. They're here to help him. But no, they said, oh no, we weren't here for that reason. We're out in field service. We can't do that. So that was like a knife in my heart. And then they said, the only reason we've called is to inform you that you shouldn't go and visit Sister so-and-so, who we were visiting, a shut-in sister. On a regular basis, we were visiting her, and I felt this was at least one link that David still had with the Watchtower, with the witnesses. And they said, no, other arrangements have been made, no longer go and visit her, as if it was a duty that we were doing that, and that we didn't care for her as a person. But we were told we shouldn't be going anymore. So that was like twisting the knife, in my heart anyways. I just couldn't understand that attitude, and the fact that it was more important that they go out in service than help somebody in the congregation. So just reviewing the points that Bergman made as to how they achieve uniformity is they limit fellowship, and you're not allowed to talk with people who oppose the Watchtower or who have any criticisms of the Watchtower, and you're not allowed to read such people either. So you're limited in your fellowship and in your reading. It's very selective what you can read. Even within Watchtower literature, you're encouraged to read only current stuff, not old light. They discourage criticism or evaluation of doctrine teachings. The witnesses have no concept of the idea of critical thinking. To them, that means you're criticizing. That's a bad thing. Whereas in society, critical thinking means you're evaluating, you're spending time making sure that something is right or wrong. The other point he made was to keep witnesses busy. And this helps because it means they won't have a lot of time to think. And if you have doubts, that's usually the first thing that you're told. Get busy. And then so they just want you to shelve your problems, shelve your doubts. Then they also highlight their own positives, but never reflect on their negatives. They just ignore the negatives and focus on the positives. And they neglect the sheep they have in order to find new ones. So that was the general summary. I'm going to link to 2 videos that were discussions from Ray Franz's book, In Search of Christian Freedom. The first one is Unity More Important Than Truth of Message, says Watchtower Lawyer. Unity, the second one is Unity at all cost, even if the cost is enforced acceptance of false prophecy. These statements were made under oath at a court case by high officials of the Watchtower. So I'll link those 2 at the end.